Since I realized that there is a little me inside of this own body, I realized just how much that little girl needed, but she never got it. The little child that you were once. The one with the immense imagination and creative power. Now all of it is lost because you had to grow up and you had to change. The inner child is a part of our subconscious that has been picking up on messages since the day we were conceived. It holds memories, feelings, emotions from the past, and it also contains hopes and dreams for the future. It is a part of us that has been wounded and scarred since we were conceived and is unable to process situations around the trauma and feelings that they felt in their childhood. Because there's a lot of confusion as children, certain beliefs that we form around our identity, abilities, and relation to our environment might be faulty. All of these false beliefs end up being reinforced and manifested into our present unless we start paying attention to our inner child. Many of us might fear to reconnect to the childhood self, to the one that is the gatekeeper to our memories. Throughout our childhood, many of us were hurt, abused, discriminated against. Some of us carried this throughout our whole entire life. And that is a hard thing to face, to go back and meet yourself again. The child in itself is innocent, but it's shaped by society. It's shaped by the environment around it. And you, when you were a child, didn't truly know what was going on, and you reacted according to the way that it was safest for you. It's that part of our adult self that is the inferior one, the one that always wants to please, that always wants to conform, that always wants to do things according to society's expectations so they don't get hurt, they don't get bullied, they don't get discriminated against, they don't get hurt or manipulated. So it is that conforming part of us that jumps in the moment they feel threatened, the moment they feel scared. As children, we might have been hurt, but we might have hurt others as well. When you grow up in an environment where you're not handled with care, you're not shown compassion, or you're not shown love, and all you see is anger and hatred and jealousy, there's the inevitable fact that you are going to pick up on that and you are going to start to act that way. It is a common saying that a girl's confidence and self-love doesn't come from the way others treat her, but the way her mother treated herself. But first, we must accept who we were as children. We must accept that we were not bad or good. We were just a consequence of our environment. And of course, many of us had grown up to feel those same feelings, anger and rage and jealousy and comparison and everything. And we might have acted out of that. I don't think there's any one of us who would say that they've never done anything bad in their childhood. You must accept that you played a part in this, but you didn't know better. It was the only way to survive. This is something that I truly refer to the little things we did, because physical abuse or verbal abuse was something that was not our fault. The way people treated us was not our fault. And this is something that I really want to get clear, because I'm not trying to victim shame anyone. This is not the reason I'm telling this. It's just so that we understand that within our peers, when we were children, we might have said something out of jealousy, out of hatred, because we were so fed up with the way we were treated. But again, I'm not talking about domestic, physical, or verbal abuse, or any of the sort, like the way people treated you was not your fault when you were a child. So I just really want to get that clear. It's taking accountability for our actions, not the actions of others. We need to become fully aware of who we were as children and look at ourselves without judgment, without shame. This is a long work, but you can start with very little things. We must allow it, our child's self, to come to the forefront and feel safe. All it needs is our attention and care, something that wasn't given to us when we were at that age. And I want to tell you a little story. This is going to be really brief, just an example. In elementary and middle school, I got bullied a lot. And I've been told by many of my peers at that time that I'm not liked. I'm hated. And for so long as I've matured, I used to despise that me. I used to be ashamed of the things I achieved that were good things. I used to be ashamed of myself at that time, and I used to look at myself with disgust and hatred. And then once I got the chance to look a little bit back, and that was the moment I realized that how am I better than those people who hated me at that time? If I'm not able to at least accept myself for who I was back then, I'm no better than others. Now things are different and things have changed, but it's interesting to look back on it. The fight I had to have with myself in order to accept myself, because I've been conditioned to hate the person I was. How to heal? The inner child never truly goes away. It sticks with us. But through cultivating a nurturing relationship with our inner self, with our little selves, we're able to see what it truly needs. Through our inner child healing, we can release that childhood trauma that we've experienced. We can release false beliefs and conditioning. It can make us understand the root cause of our present problems. It's also healing parts of yourself that were wounded and are still bleeding. That's the key. Because once you understand where those problems come from, you can allow that to just be. But as much as it sounds amazing, we all know that this takes so much time, but it's so worth it. You will see that things will just even themselves out more naturally and more easily. So let me share with you some healing practices that I've been doing that helped me a lot when I wanted to get in touch with my childhood self. There are many meditations that focus on childhood personas, and you can find them on YouTube. I'll link some meditations down below so you can try them out. It is a meditative way for you to connect to yourself, and it's something that requires some time. So just make sure that you are at a safe space, that you are comfortable, and you are open to just meeting who you were as a child. There's always journaling that I talk about a lot, but journaling is really a good way to just get things out of your system. It helps you to kind of understand. So there are many prompts that are a great way for you to connect, to reintroduce yourself to the child you were, but also heal deep-rooted trauma and childhood memories, childhood conditioning, stuff like that. Other types of healing practices are watching cartoons that you loved as a child. Just anything that you feel connected to still. Allow your childhood self to come forth. Make it cozy. Get some snacks, shut the curtains, get under the blankets, just make it comfy. And besides watching movies with yourself, you can do any kind of childhood activity, like playing card games or even going on an adventure. Make it a special event, more like a ritual, rather than just a normal thing you do. Looking at childhood photos. And I know it can be triggering, because it used to be triggering for me as well, when I see certain people reappear from the past. on those photos. It is really important to do it with an open mind and with a certain type of detachment, not wanting to judge it. So this is something that not all of us could do, but through time we might find the courage, or we might find the willingness to reconnect to some of our relatives, people that have really shaped our lives, in a good and bad way. The thing is, when I want to talk about this, I just remember the people that I had in my life, and sometimes I'm like, no, I could never ever talk to them in my life. And that is a really fair point to make. So starting with just people that had a positive influence on you as a child is a really great way to start talking with grandma, grandpa, or anyone else that is still around and you still keep in touch with, to kind of tell you about yourself a little bit more. Because what is interesting is so many stories that people have told me were truly shocking, that the picture I've created in my head when I was a child is completely different from the way they saw me. And that can be so empowering to just hear a relative, your mother, your grandfather talk to you about your child's self as a gemstone. Go back to places that hold a lot of trauma for you. And then, if you truly just want to get things over with, connect with those people that hurt you the most. When you think of childhood healing, it is progressive. And the things that you might have thought you could never do, all of a sudden, you were going to be willing to do it. And at first, it might just be watching cartoons with yourself. But maybe a few years on the line, you're going to be like, okay, I'm going to talk to this relative now because I feel like I'm interested in what they're about to say. So don't think of this as you need to do all of these at once and it's going to be a super amazing experience, because it might not be. It might be really hard to handle. But know that you are going to be ready for it if you're willing to heal. If you're willing to heal, there will be a time when you are going to think about these things differently. And I suggest you come back to this video to watch how much you've changed. Looking through stuff, just like going up in the attic and looking at your little baby clothes. You might not remember a lot, but who knows, it might ignite something in you. And the last thing is reminders. This is something that you can do on the daily to remind yourself of who you are and who you were in the present. If you've gotten to know your child's self to an extent where you are conscious of those childhood patterns, behaviors, and beliefs, whenever something like that comes up, you are going to automatically identify the pattern. Reminding yourself that you are not that person anymore and that you are a grown-ass adult is going to help you shift a little bit and step back and slowly detach yourself from those patterns. So many times we end up disregarding the fact that the inner child appears way more times in our everyday lives than we think. When we feel lonely or abandoned, when someone doesn't respond the way we want, when we feel little and powerless, and so on. But how do we recognize and respond more maturely? First of all, it's really important that we give our inner child a chance to appear just as it is. In our everyday lives, we could easily do this by walking on the street and kind of imagining our little self walking with us, or the other way around, like we are the little self and we have our higher self walking us and holding hands with who we are. Some people tend to relieve anxiety by hugging themselves. It could also be an exercise that we do when we feel lonely, when we feel stressed, when we feel like there's a lot. Just going to a safe space where we are all alone and just hugging ourselves and imagining that we're safe and that our child self is safe. But it can be also when we are in a quarrel, when we are fighting or when we feel really worried, is just acknowledging that there is a child within us that wants to come out, letting it come out, crying, throwing things, just doing the utmost, but then coming back and becoming rooted again. It is important to feel those feelings and not repress them, because that is the way you listen to your child self, is by allowing it to come out in a safe space, not around others, just when you're by yourself. The reason I'm saying this is because throwing things around or just doing things like this, it's not necessarily something you don't want to do around other people. It's something that you do. It's an intimate thing. It's like you're with yourself. But if you have that kind of a support system, do it together. But anyway, when our child self reappears, might not be that obvious, especially if we're just getting started on this healing journey. But we can track it. Usually our mind tends to subconsciously run an algorithm, let's call it like this. When we get into a similar situation in the present that we've already experienced in the past, that's when the algorithm is run. The behavior is reappearing. But it's all unconscious, and sometimes we don't even realize. It's like there's another identity that comes forth. It's the scared, wounded, inferior little me that comes up, that is threatened and wants to be loved and cared for, but is also pushing people away because it doesn't know how to care. It doesn't know how to ask for love. It just wants it. It craves it. So we can call our brain like a remembrance machine. And it is our job to mindfully break these remembrance cycles. This can only be done once we know what the behavior is and start to question it. Why am I acting like this? Why do I feel like this? Why do I do this? Is it to stay safe, to feel unharmed, to feel loved, to feel cared for? Is it because I felt abandoned? It is bizarre how our minds want to keep us from re-experiencing the same shit, but it still does it anyway. We'll still do it. And the thing is, we suffer even more. But once we realize what the behavior is in a certain situation, we can revert that back to a past situation. Once we find the root cause for our behaviors, for our action, it's going to be easier for us to make it more conscious. And the last time when it was unconscious and our brain was like, pow pow, we can be like, pow pow, I know what you're doing. And I know why you're doing it. I know what is the behavior, what is the immediate action that I'm willing to get from that behavior, and where does it originate from. You've been rejected by a boy in high school. So your immediate action, your behavior, was to run away. We're unable to see that present moment with fresh eyes because we already have this past programming that we're unable to let go of. And once we're conscious of it, it's easier for us to analyze the situation that we're in. We have to consciously shift our behavior with care, love, and absolute patience. You cannot expect yourself to heal in a day, but rather focus on the change. It takes great courage to break repeated inner child survival mechanisms. However, it will change your life for the better. Creating a nurturing relationship with your inner child every day, becoming our own mothers and fathers, accepting that once we're adults, we are the ones that have to take care of ourselves, will ensure more connection and safety within. And you know the saying, as within, so without.